Hello, donut lovers! So I'm going to do my August wrap-up. All the books I read in August. I think I had a record month for reading. I think I read 22 books. The first book I finished in August is an indie book by Zanzibar 7 Schwarznegger, and it is the Veneri Verbum. I really enjoyed this book. I have a review over on my blog. Check out in the links below. The second book I finished in August was the third book in the Gift of Grace books, Falling from Grace. I really like the Gift of Grace series because it's just, the characters are realistic, the setting is realistic, and even though there is a supernatural element, I thought it was really well integrated, and I really enjoyed these books. The third book I listened to, I think I pulled this one accidentally from a list. Something About You, the FBI U.S. Attorney #1. The fourth book I read, I loved, and I've picked up several other books by this author, Jodi, Picoult, My Sister's Keeper. So good. It was just so contemporary and realistic and morally ambiguous and just made me angry and made me emotional and made me sad and made me just think about things in a way I don't normally. The next book I finished was another Jodi Picoult, Between the Lines. Between the Lines #1. I really enjoyed this book. I actually listened to this one, another audiobook. I rated it 5 stars, again, like My Sister's Keeper. It was just so imaginative, and it was kind of a little bit like Indian in the Cupboard, and a fresh kind of fairy tale. And I would love to read more in this series. If it does continue, it looks like it does. The next book I finished in August, The Thief, The Queen's Thief #1 by Megan Whalen Turner. I did not like this one at all. Hardcore fantasy. I just didn't like it. The next book I read is a book someone I know left for me in the book club I'm in, and it's another romance book. Along Came Mr. Right by Jerry Russell. I didn't like this one either. The next book I finished in August was a surprise. I actually nabbed this ebook quite some time ago and just got around to reading it because I've seen the author several times. I think I actually snagged this one at NorwestCon. This one is by Nikki McCormack, The Girl in the Clockwork Cat. If I had money to spend on books for the rest of the year, I would totally purchase and immediately read the second one in this Clockwork Enterprises series because this book was so amazing. So well written. The story was amazing. Links down below for my review of that book. As soon as I get some more budget, I will be purchasing the second one in that series and look forward to maybe reading her. I think it's a young adult fantasy. And one of the YouTubers I like watching, link down below, she actually responded to one of my comments the other day. I was like, hey! Kate's Book Date recommends and loves the Winner's Trilogy. And again, it's a fantasy. I do love YA, and I have a hard time getting into fantasy. But this one, she went on and on and on about, so I decided to pick it up, and the first book was so good. The next book I read was kind of a surprise for me. I picked it up because the author is, her publisher is Fire and Ice / Melange Books, and I really like most of the things they publish. Like, I really enjoy the stories they choose to publish. Like, as a publisher, I've taken note, and it was so realistic that I actually got like a little bit of PTSD. It was just hard to read, but also so very gratifying because it was so realistic, and it was like, that's me! That's what I went through! Well, I mean, not all of it, but, and she, you know, the way that Christina Hoag is able to kind of like show what a bad relationship would look like and how it would progress. For teenagers to see that is so important. Really, really good. I would recommend it to anybody who likes YA, anybody who wants something realistic, anybody who maybe wants to see someone else's self-journey. You know, the characters just, oh man. The next book I read in August, I've decided this author is my new favorite YA romance writer. Simone Elkeles, if I'm pronouncing that right. She is amazing. Oh my god, this book blew me away. So not only are the characters, I mean, they are stereotypical, but they're not. They like transcend their character roles, and they're more than just what they maybe what you see on the surface, what they show on the surface. So perfect chemistry. I liked this one a lot. I would read anything Simone Elkeles wrote. I would love to meet that author and just get in her head. The next book I read, I met the author at the Capital Indie Book Con in Olympia, and that is Undone by the Star. I wasn't as blown away by this one as I was by Outbid by the Boss, but it was a pretty well-written romance. I'll give you that, Stephanie Browning. The link to that review is down below. The next book I read in August is a book that's been sitting on my TBR, and that is the first in the Evolution series by Kelly Carrero, named Evolution. And it was pretty good. I will be reviewing that book in the upcoming month. The next book I read in August, here's that other Jodi Picoult. The third one I read. Geez, I really like that author. Oh, you should go find some books by her. Anyways, it was Leaving Time. It was got a little bogged down in elephants. So this one focuses on elephants and kind of reminded me of Where'd You Go, Bernadette a little bit for the Vanishing Act. And it had a little bit of mystery. Moving down the list, we're almost there. The next book I read in August, The Winter's Crime, the second in the Winter's Trilogy, and I already kind of went over why I didn't think that was that great. But it wasn't bad enough to keep me from reading the third one. The next book I read was one I've actually been putting off quite a long time. I don't know why. Probably because it's another YA dystopian novel, and I kind of got tired of those. Aren't you tired of them yet, world? Please say yes! Anyways, this one was Reap by Casey Bond, and this one was so good. I was, I think, halfway done reading, and I bought the whole series. It was that good. It had apples! Oh my god, apples! Themes. Thanks for the apples. So I read Reap, then I read Resist, and then I read Reclaim, and I think I read all three of them within, I think, 3 days. It was wonderful. I loved all of them. And it had a very satisfying, like, series, trilogy ending. It was just well done. The next book I read for August, I read for my fantasy science fiction book club at the Neverending Bookshop in Bothell. We meet the first Fridays of the month, 6 p.m. And we read Zero World by Jason Hough. Happens in space. On another planet. It was really fun. I didn't count, but I would say there were equal amounts of male to female characters in the book, and that's not done much and hard to do well. Maybe people don't care about doing it. Anyways, I really like Zero World, and I hope there's more. It ends on a semi-cliffhanger, so hopefully we're getting another one of those. The next book I read in August is another indie book, Bitsy by Rayna L. Stiner. I'm still debating over my review for that one and my review rating. There were a lot of things I didn't think were done well. There were some things I thought were done really well. And this is also a survivor story, just like Girl on the Brink, but this one was so very, very different. And I wasn't as enthralled with it as by Girl on the Brink, but it had a lot of things going on. You'll see in my review when that comes out what I thought. So the next book I read is a reread by Maggie Stiefvater, and I really like Maggie Stiefvater. I read The Raven Boys, the first book in the Raven cycle, and I'm waiting with bated breath for more of the series to come into my holds at the library. So I'm waiting on book 2. I think it's The Dream Thieves. It's just really interesting for fantasy. It's well done. It's not your typical fantasy. That's what I really love about Maggie Stiefvater. She writes fantasy that's not your typical mages and wizards and dragons and man on a quest. These books are just different and fun to read. The last book I got through in the month of August was, I originally bought this as a trilogy and decided before I was halfway through the first book that I was not going to read anymore. The first book is called More by T.M. Franklin, and it was just, everything you see in fantasy, supernatural, romance, paranormal. It was just not different, not original, not interesting, and I had a hard time finishing this first book. I will review that at a later time. So that's my August wrap-up, all the books I finished in August. And if you want to see the complete list, links down below.